Hello and welcome to episode 70 of Bodied, the Cloud9 Fancast. Tonight, we shall discuss the wins and losses that occurred over the past week, Cloud9's unfortunate disbanding of the Vainglory team, and any other pertinent stuff. I'm your host, Havokpus, and I'm joined by frozencreek.
Frozencreek.
Like a duck.
This is also a special night for Havokpus. It's actually his birthday today on Wednesday, so if you hear this, give him a shout out. I'm sure he would greatly appreciate you guys reminding him that he's old as hell now.
I am 1 year closer to dying.
That's the only good thing going on. And a shout out to myself today because I hit a deer today in the city. So
I was sick. Clean kill.
No, it was not. It was not
venison?
A clean
kill.
I feel
totally
terrible about. I feel terrible about
you
it.
You sniped it with your bumper.
Yeah, no, not even that. It was. Yeah, I don't want to talk about it that much. Just the fact that I hit a deer today. Not impressed.
Alright, well, hopefully that doesn't haunt you the rest of your life. That and the ghost deer that will probably be seeking vengeance.
That's the goal.
But let's get started. Enough insane ramblings. So the first topic, I guess, some updates on some stuff. CSGO participated in the WESG NA finals. They pretty much crushed all the competition. I think it was like only other North American teams and then like SK Gaming. And they pretty much crushed the competition. They actually played SK in like a best of one on Inferno earlier in that tournament, and they beat them pretty handily. But SK, I guess, finally decided like, okay, we have to come to play because they whooped Cloud9. And beat us 2-1. They crushed us on Train 16-9 and killed us on Inferno 16-6. But we finished second, so we got a sweet 10 grand cash prize and a spot at the global finals.
I didn't see much of that tournament. I saw Train, the second half of Train, and the 16-9 score is flattering towards us. We didn't really look all that good, so I guess
yeah, I think to be fair to the team, they were playing like matches like all weekend. Like they were doing like a lot of matches in a row. Even though it was best of one stuff, I mean, you have to consider, it wasn't like the major or anything where you play a set and then you can rest for the rest of the day, right? It's like, okay, we got to play like Swole Patrol or whoever, and then like an hour later it's like, okay, now we gotta play Mystic, and then we gotta play like French Canadians. So you're playing like 4 or 5 teams, like in pretty rapid succession. So I can imagine they were super tired. I think also SK Gaming is still one of the top teams in the world, so I think when you in a situation where it's like 2 top teams playing against each other, it's probably like a coin flip, and just whoever wins that day just comes out on top that day. At least we took them to the full 3 games of the best of 3, and it wasn't a complete wipeout.
Yeah, I think they had a lot to come back at us after the major loss to Cloud9, and then losing to us earlier in the tournament. So I don't know. Yeah, playing a lot of games in 1 day or 2 days does create a really good chance for upsets and random losses to happen. So, I mean, it's not a huge deal. It's not like it's a major or something.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's not like it's the end of the world. I mean, it's not like we lost to any of the other teams, right? Like we beat all the other teams in that tournament, and this is our only loss. And I mean, it's the SK Gaming. Like once in a while, you're bound to lose to someone like SK Gaming, right? Champions or no, this really doesn't say anything. I mean, I'm happy with the fact that we at least did fairly well for the most part.
Yeah.
So in some other CSGO related news, while supplies last, be sure to purchase your very own CSGO Boston Major shirt. This shirt commemorates Cloud9's championship win at the Boston Major. It's a pretty cool looking shirt. If I had to describe it, it would basically be like the Cloud9 logo, but it has like the American flag filled in instead of like the regular blue. And it says Boston Major under the logo, and then on the back, it has the names of the players, and it even included the coach. It even included Valens in there. So it's a pretty sick shirt. I pre-ordered mine because it was only like $25 plus $5 shipping, and it's a super cool looking shirt. It commemorates a pretty historic moment in not only the team's history, but again, like esports history in general. So if you want to support the organization, have a little, bragging rights memorabilia, make sure to snatch it up while supplies last, because I believe this is like a limited edition shirt, at least from what the store said.
Yeah, that was my understanding of it too. I guess kind of while we're on the topic, since it's just both of us, we can flow kind of off script. Have you seen any of the merchandise for any of the other a League of Legends teams yet? I know CLG.
No, I haven't.
I saw CLG's.
I know CLG and I think Liquid are like Thieves. Crazy with their merch, and they just keep making like a bunch of stuff.
Or yeah, I've only seen a CLG's new stuff, and it's actually like super legit. It's like almost like streetwear, kind of thing. Like it's like super hip. So I guess Jack is trying.
Yeah, it looks really nice
with merchandise soon, but I don't know. I think CLG did a really good job with the one piece that I saw. So while I think this is a start, this isn't quite on the same level of merchandise that the CLG thing that I saw was. So it's still a cool thing. A cool shirt to commemorate a championship win. It's a big deal. So pick them up there in the Cloud9 store.
Yeah, for sure. I would like to see Cloud9 maybe stretch themselves a little bit more with how they design their merchandise, because a lot of their merch is just like logo on the front, and that's about it. I'd like to see them maybe get a little more creative, maybe try some different stuff out. But we'll have to see. Moving on to our next little bit of news, Rocket League finished second in the Ting Open. It was actually a pretty long fought journey. In the quarterfinals, they had to play against FlyQuest, and they had to go to a full 7 games. So that was pretty grueling. And the next day, they had to play Dignitas, but they beat them 4-0. And then when they got to Gale Force in the finals, it went to all 7 games and just this grueling, like, just this really, like, drag out fight between them where, like, they're constantly going into overtimes. They're, just, like, going tit for tat with the score. It's, just this really stressful experience. So you get, like, game 7 for all the marbles in this little tournament. And then I guess C9 just ran out of gas. They didn't have anything left in the tank. Their tires sprang a leak, but they got crushed 7-1 and lost in that final game, which was really disheartening after all the effort and energy they put in those other games.
Yeah, I personally didn't get a chance to watch it, but I was following the tournament as the scores piled in. It is an unfortunate loss. I thought that they played really well throughout the tournament, but sometimes just shit doesn't go right, and it kind of seemed like one of those games where once stuff started going poorly, it just kept going wrong.
Yeah, it just kind of snowballs, and you just get more tilted as it goes on. But, yeah, I mean, up until that last game, they were playing their hearts out. They were playing pretty well, I think. They were trying to be aggressive and keep the ball on the enemy side. They were doing some really good saves. I remember there was a few moments where I think Gale Force was just keep trying to like hit into the net, and they just kept denying them and denying them. So, you know, it's not like their play was bad. It was just that they kind of just ran out of steam on that last game, and they lost focus or whatever for a second. And that happens. It's, you know, it sucks, but I don't think it's something that we should really like get on them for, right? Like, you know, stuff like that just happens. It's not like they just completely whiffed it at like a world's
yeah, they're not doing anything out of the ordinary. It's not like they're dropping out early or anything. That there's they're still playing well. They're still making it to finals. They're still making it late in tournaments. So I think if they can continue to do this, that their leash is going to be just fine.
Yeah.
I don't know when it becomes a point that it becomes a short leash, but I don't think from anything that I've seen that they have been underperforming at to any level that would be disappointing too much.
I think one nitpick I do have is maybe they can try and like diversify their offensive strategy a little bit, because from what I've seen, at least in that Gale Force game, they would always just try to like attack the goal straight away. While Gale Force, what they were doing is that they would do these really intricate kind of passing plays, and Cloud9 did this some too, but not as much to the extent that I think Gale Force did. But they would like pass it a bunch to try to like really redirect the Cloud9 defense to where like everyone would be going one way, and then you just put the ball where they're not, and then they get easier goals. And I think Cloud9 was doing the strategy where they just really try to like push it up the middle and just try to like get it in there, and sometimes that doesn't work out. But that's my only real nitpick, and I may be a bit off base on that, and if I am, feel free to call me out on it, I guess.
Well, I think that's something that can come down to preparation. Short preparation times can impact how teams can scout and be prepared to play a specific style and find specific counters against the team. Like sometimes a team might just have everything going for them. So I'm not gonna say that a demolishing loss means that they're awful. It's just unfortunate.
Yeah, and I was just talking about one little aspect of their play, but anyway, you know, second place finish is still pretty good. I'm fine with the silver medal. But moving on to our last little tidbit of PUBG news, Frozen's favorite that he never watches. I honestly think I'm the only one that tries, at least in the Cloud9 community, or one of the few that actually tries to keep up with PUBG results.
Yeah.
And anytime I mention it to other people, they're just like, "We did something?" And I'm like, "Yeah." But so they had a rough start in the PUBG Online NA Showdown. I know that's a mouthful, but they came in 37th out of a possible 40, so not the best. You know, that was their first time in such a big thingy for this month. Hopefully they'll pick it back up. But on the bright side, the team did finish second in the GLL qualifiers, and that snagged them a spot in its first season. So PUBG is really interesting because we have our hands in a lot of different events, right, that are kind of going on and starting up. So like we have like the Auzom thing, we have the PUBG Online Showdown thing, we have this GLL thing. Later we're going to IEM Katowice. So PUBG is really interesting because the scene is very spread out to where like you could be doing a lot of different sort of leagues or whatever kind of at the same time. I suppose the only worry is like maybe we're spreading ourselves too thin, maybe, you know, it's not worth it. You know, there can probably be arguments against it, but I think that's fairly interesting.
Yeah, it is like a non-traditional setup. Yeah, like you said, I don't really watch it that much, so I'm not 100% sure how it works and how the skills break down. And I haven't played it enough to know, so I shouldn't input too much.
I'm super bad at it. I streamed some
terrible
earlier today, and I did bad. But let's move on to our first big story, Frozen. Now we can actually have maybe some real dialogue, and it's
Hell yeah.
Vainglory's done. It's finished. Cloud9 announced that after much rumor and speculation that they will be exiting the Vainglory scene in a sort of a vague announcement on Monday. And I was very sad. Were you sad? Because I was sad.
Yeah. I always liked our Vainglory team. The switch to 5-man, I guess, kind of put this esport into a weird spot. So yeah, those who didn't know, Vainglory is switching from a 3-man map. Are they switching to a complete 5-man map, or is it the same map?
Yeah, I believe it's basically the League of Legends map or League of Legends Dota setup, basically, to where you have like 3 lanes and then the jungle in between the lanes. So it's going from like this interesting sort of 3v3 setup where you have one long lane and then this huge stretch of jungle, kind of side by side. Now it's just League of Legends and Dota, but on your phone, and I don't like that.
Yeah, it is kind of a weird setup kind of thing. I'm not entirely sure why they switched, because there are other mobile games that kind of have a 5v5. Arena of Valor is a 5v5 game. So maybe they just didn't feel like it was in the right place. So they're switching it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually really liked Vainglory because it was 3v3. It was very unique, and it put a different emphasis on sort of the MOBA genre instead of it being about a lot of it being about sort of macro play, right? It was more about, it put more emphasis on like team fighting and like individual mechanics, right? And I think that was really interesting. That's what made Vainglory extremely fun, because you had all these brawls, you had all this stuff with like reflex block and like popping like healing stuff and trying to extend fights or like try to get a pick early, and all this stuff revolving around team fights and in the jungle area, that it made the game very fresh and very unique. But I think with switching it to a 5v5 setup, you're putting it more into just the generic space of MOBA games. And it's like, well, it's nothing different. If I wanted to watch a MOBA game, I'll just watch League of Legends, because it's going to be kind of the same thing now. And it's something that I just understand more. So I feel like they're losing this uniqueness for almost no reason, I feel.
Yeah. I can agree with that. So I'm kind of surprised that Cloud9 went the route of just dismantling the team, because they've been overall really successful as a group. So I was hoping that they would go about the route of adding 2 more players and competing in the future, but it seems as of right now that they just don't think Vainglory has a good future, so they just dropped it. So if they return or if they don't return, I'm not sure. I think a lot of the question has to do with what is the future of mobile games, as opposed to more computer oriented games also.
Yeah, that's definitely a big question. I think having your foot in the door of the the mobile market, I think is very useful, because it can be a fairly lucrative area. Like, it's growing all the time. Like, everyone has a phone, right? I think sooner or later there will be a big mobile esport that you can probably get into and can be fairly lucrative. If that is Vainglory or another game, I don't know. I think, and this is something I want to give a shout out to Citrus Empire, our friend and sort of Vainglory person. He was talking a little bit about why Cloud9 left, and he said that just like, yeah, the 5v5 thing really messed everybody up, because there's no tournaments right now. Everyone's trying to get used to 5v5 and no one knows how to play it. The meta is just complete garbage, because everyone's just trying all this different stuff. So there's nothing's going on tournament wise. So you'd be sitting on like players and doing nothing. you have to figure out with your players and your staff like how the game is actually going to be played once this thing goes live, and then you have to worry if you'll still retain that success that you had in the 3v3 era. So I think backing out kind of makes sense, especially when you think that, if this just goes to 5v5, numbers may drop off as everyone just switches to watching League or Dota or something. So I think that it's a safe bet. I'm actually curious to see if they will try to fill this hole with anything. If they'll try to enter a new space like the fighting games and try to get someone from like Street Fighter or Marvel vs. Capcom or something, or if they'll go get like a FIFA player, because I hear that FIFA is growing in number, or some other like sort of niche sports game like a racing game or something. I don't know, or a long shot, maybe get back into Dota. Who knows, right?
I think it all depends on if there's a major coming up, and if so, then they'll just get a random European team who loses in like the first round.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, there's other options too. There's you can get back into older scenes like Halo or Call of Duty. I think still have scenes that are Call of Duty more than Halo are probably sustainable, and I think Rainbow Six is cultivating somewhat of a scene. It's really hard to tell because these things kind of fluctuate in terms of popularity. So eventually they kind of wane and not get very lucrative, and then maybe there's this big explosion, everyone's playing this game. So I'm not sure exactly what they'll enter in. I mean, they have their bases covered with all the major ones. They have League, they have CSGO, and they have Overwatch. So I think at this point, they're probably going to try to just fill in the really niche markets that couldn't hurt to kind of bolster your organization with.
Yeah, so just a quick question before we close. What do you think the future is for mobile games compared to computer games?
That's a good question. I think, like I said, it has potential. I think it depends on the kind of game, how it works and how accessible it is. So, the thing I had an issue with Vainglory was I couldn't really play it on my phone because it was all, tap-based, and trying to, tap something on, an iPhone screen, especially, the later, or the, the older models, where, the screen isn't as big. So you're trying to use your big thumbs, and you're just tapping everywhere, and you don't really know what you're doing. That could be a problem. So it's all about interfaces and a whole bunch of other crap. But I think that you can make mobile games a big thing. It just depends on what the game is and how you market it and stuff.
Have you played Arena of Valor yet?
I played a little bit of it. I actually kind of like it.
I think it solves some of the problems.
Because it has a joystick, so you can actually control stuff.
Which I don't love the joystick from a controlling aspect, but it feels normal kind of playing it. But I'm kind of in the same boat on mobile esports. I feel like now's not the time. I feel like the size of the screen isn't quite there yet, and the resolution isn't there. But I just don't think that phones and tablets quite have the processing power to create and power a game that is able to be broadcasted to the masses and played well enough to create any kind of global appeal beyond what we've seen so far. So I think in the future that there's going to be potential there if someone can figure out a really good way to unlock the phone and tablet for competitive esports. But I think for the immediate future and probably into the intermediate future that computers are going to rule esports still.
Yeah, I agree as well. And then maybe some console stuff every now and then, but no one cares about consoles.
That's true.
But let's move on to other stuff. So let me update everyone on Overwatch stuff really quick, and then we can get on to League of Legends. So the London Spitfire were on fire last weekend, as they completely crushed the Seoul Dynasty in a brilliant 4-0. They utilized 11 out of their 12-player roster, which is pretty incredible. And everyone played great. I think that no one really waned at any point. It was a pretty great display of utter dominance. And they also played Shanghai, and they didn't drop a single map. I think it was Overwatch League's first ever shutout. And it all went good. And this week they'll be playing against Houston Outlaws and the New York Excelsior for their final matches in the first stage, and will hopefully be participating in the Stage 1 playoffs. And yeah, so watch the games this week. If you want to hear more in-depth stuff about that, check out the dogfight. It's a really good episode this week. We talk about those matches as well as our preview for this week. I had a pretty good conversation with Jordan, who was my co-host for that week. So please check it out.
Yeah, I don't see many worlds where London doesn't make it to the Stage 1 playoffs. So if you're gonna watch the match against the New York Excelsior or whatever, it's gonna be a really good matchup. Both teams have one loss, I believe, at this current moment, so they're tied for first.
Yes.
So it's kind of the who becomes the first seed for playoffs, and that'll be a lot of fun. If you haven't watched Overwatch in a while, they've revamped it quite a bit. It's not perfect still. It doesn't quite solve all the problems.
It's a lot easier.
Yeah, it's a lot easier. They do a lot better of a job showing who is in command of the camera. They do a lot better showing overhead views, and it just feels kind of like you're watching an esport compared to what it used to feel like.
Before.
So
yeah, also there's some really great casting. You have like Monte Cristo and Doa, Mr. X and Uber. There's a lot of really good casting talent involved as well. So the production value is great. Again, just check out Overwatch League. It's actually really fun to watch and a pretty good time, even if it's not like a team like our team playing, for example. A lot of times there's some pretty exciting matches going on. So
yeah, and if you're from
be sure to check that out.
And if you're from like a different city or something, there might be like a team already for you. Like you're not required to follow London if you're from Dallas or if you're from San Francisco or something. So it is technically a different esport. So I think it's definitely worth checking out, even if you're not specifically a London fan.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's move on to League of Legends, our last little bit for tonight. Just an update for everyone on the Academy squad and what they're doing. They received their first loss at the hands of Clutch Gaming Academy. Clutch has Moon as their jungler, and in a meta where Eve is a good pick, it's probably not a good idea to give Moon Eve, because Moon has always been known for his Evelynn play. Right, like if you want to know how to play Eve really well, you go to Moon. So he had like 10 kills or something, like he went off. But against Optic, the team bounced back and they played really well. I'm actually really impressed with how Shira's been playing lately. He's been showing a lot of really good play in the top lane. He like really never ever dies. He comes and helps the team out when he needs to. He split pushes when he needs to, and I think he's really showing the things that make a really good top laner. And I think that with more experience under his belt, playing with the team and playing on stage, I think he'll definitely be a good pro in a few years or so.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of promising talent in the Academy series. So I'm glad that some of them are showing up. The Clutch Gaming roster, the Academy team is actually a decent roster also. So it's not like we lost to some scrubs. That's the roster with Moon and Piglet on it. So it actually is a decent roster also.
Yeah, it's actually a decent roster, and I think that losing to them, that's no shame. And I mean we're like 5-1. So like you can afford a loss every now and then as long as you learn from something, right? Like losing's okay every once in a while if you can look and say, oh, okay, here's what we did wrong, and then identify how to fix it. So, I'm fine. I'm fine with that. It's not a big deal. But moving on to LCS, we had another 2-a-week in Frozen. It was pretty great. We handily defeated Optic with just a standout performance from Smoothie. His Alistar this weekend, I gotta say, was just amazing.
Yeah, I wonder if he's gonna get Alistar again this week. He makes Alistar look like the Alistar from Season 5 that was banned.
He makes it look incredibly broken.
He makes it look like the Alistar from Season 5 who was banned every single match at Worlds.
Yeah,
so
and
it was pretty
the amount
hype
of
to
roaming.
watch.
The amount of roaming that he does is insane. Like, there will be a play going on, right? And it's like, oh, Jensen's fighting someone. Oh, here's Sven. And then all of a sudden, out of, like, nowhere, Smoothie flashes in and does, like, a knock-up. And you're just like, where did he come from? Like he's not coming from bot lane either. He's coming from, like, wrapping around, like, red buff or something from, like, the top side of the map. So he comes from, like, this really unexpected angle all of a sudden. And just, like, hits them with, like, a Q or something. Or, like, stampedes, like, rushes them and then knocks them up. And it's just like, where did he come from? How did he do this? What happened?
Yeah, I think he's a really good indication of how important figuring out what the opponent's strengths are at the moment are, and playing with your jungler and mid laner are. Those two plays that you're talking about happened pretty much in quick succession. Svenskeren kind of knew that he was going to be pressured at his red buff. So Smoothie it was kind of like an unseen roam also. He backed and was walking towards red buff also at the same time that Svenskeren was getting over there.
Yeah.
And I'm not entirely sure how Jensen got such a good roam off, because I believe he was pushed under tower. But it was something that Clutch should have been able to win the fight over. Yeah, but Smoothie's roam made a huge difference into that short little fight, the skirmish, and then we won that. And then I think they backed maybe. Then in mid lane they were able to catch Fabian out on Orianna. So I was really impressed with how they were able to read the game, and how they were able to read a minute or 2 minutes ahead of what was actually going to happen. Because I don't think that's something that we've seen Cloud9 do that well before.
Yeah, I think also you have to give it to Smoothie for being able to really trust Sneaky to go to bot lane and just kind of lane by himself. And you can kind of tell that, like, okay, Sneaky's not going to do anything stupid and die, right? Like, so Smoothie's like leaving his lane and being like, okay, Sneaky, I'm going to leave you. Play safe, don't do anything dumb. And Sneaky's like, okay, I got it. And then they make a play, and then it's fine. So I think to have that much trust in your lane partner, to be able to go on such an out-of-your-way roam, I think is a pretty good testament to how our teamwork works, at least from our core 3 players.
Yeah, some other good performances. I mean, I thought Licorice looked pretty good too.
Yeah, Licorice's performance this weekend was interesting. I can't remember much from the Optic game, but from the Clutch Gaming game, Licorice played pretty well as Gnar into GP. I think there were at some points he was getting a little bit too aggressive, but I think we can't necessarily completely fault him for that since he is a rookie. But there were some points where, I think a more seasoned player maybe would have backed off, but he kept going to try to push the envelope, and that does draw a lot of pressure, and we did get something out of that, I think. But at the same time, maybe don't do it to the point where like you're like inting or just dying for no reason.
Yeah, I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that Cloud9 just didn't know how to deal with the Tark in GP in general. We couldn't quite figure out how to unlock the map, and I mean, it wasn't just Lakers whose fault it was.
Oh yeah, that
But
comp that they played into
yeah,
was so hard
gnarly.
because they had so many zoning tools that, like Sneaky and Jensen, and I think to a lesser extent everybody else, just could not walk forward because like as soon as someone missteps, shockwave, body slam, GP ultimate, barrels everywhere, Taric stun, like you're just gonna get focused down too hard. So like they had to play that so slow and so careful, which made the game kind of agonizing. But they only let Clutch get like one tower. So like from a macro perspective, we were really controlling the map. We were kind of going even in kills, but that was just because we couldn't really break through their team because it was so difficult to.
Yeah, and I think once we move further into the season that we're going to be able to break down teams a little bit better. Like besides the comp, I don't think Cloud9 really played that well around the Meganar. I can't think of too many opportunities or too many fights that we were in where we actually had a Meganar at the time that we needed one. So I don't think that's entirely on Licorice either. That's still a team kind of thing. My only
Yeah, I agree.
my only problem so far with how everything is going is I still think that Svenskeren is dying too much. I don't think that's something I've quite pointed out yet, but he's died the most of all junglers in LCS right now, and he is tied for third in most deaths with
Did he die at
5
all that
people.
weekend? I don't think he died at all that weekend.
I'm not sure, but he still died 18 times. Lemon Nation has died 21, Keen's died 20, and High Stunt, Matt, Svenskeren, and Honster have all died 18.
Well, I think to that point, so like yes, Spencer may be dying a lot, right? But sometimes you have to trade off a death to get a better play, right? So if you can sacrifice one player and Cloud9 gets 2 or 3, that's a completely worth trade. Like you make that trade 9 times out of 10, right? So I think that he's not doing like what he done in TSM where he's just going in, invading, and dying randomly, right? He's dying in fights where the team makes a play and he is trying to cause chaos within the fight and ultimately try to get the team to come out ahead in that fight. So, maybe yes, he's dying a little bit more than normal, but I think that in the grand scheme of things, it's working really well, and it's maybe not a calculated decision, but it's one that benefits the team as a whole.
Yeah, and I have a feeling without looking back on it that a good amount were from the Echo Fox game, but that was just something I've picked up looking around recently, is that comparatively to everyone else, he's been dying a lot. So that's one of my main concerns.
No, yeah, I mean, it's something to point out.
Yeah.
I mean that game that he played. I can't remember when he played Evelyn, but there was a game where he played Evelyn, and he died maybe like 4 or 5 times.
No, that wasn't the Echo Fox.
No, that wasn't the Echo Fox.
That was the same weekend though,
game.
Right?
That was before. Maybe I can't remember, but So yeah,
they're
so
not that important.
So he was playing Evelyn, right? And like he was dying, but in those fights he was running around and like doing a lot of damage, and then Cloud9 would eventually overtake them because like yeah, Sven dies, but then 3 people from the other team died, so it kind of works out. And he's doing other stuff too, right? He's like crushing the map, and he's doing some really great map pressure, and I think he's also he's freed up a lot more since when he was on TSM because he has laners that will actually help follow up on his invades to ensure a safe invade or an invade that leads to a kill or something. Because before on TSM he would just go in the jungle and it's like Bjergsen's like, I'm not gonna leave my lane. Bjergsen doesn't really help out. the bot lane doesn't really help out. But on Cloud9, he's much freer to just like trust his instincts and play off his instincts, which he really likes to do. And if he's in trouble, Jensen moves up to help him. Licorice moves up to help him. So I think that, sure, he's dying a lot, but he's also doing a lot. So I think Sven's looking really good right now, actually, and I'm really excited to see how he does in the later weeks with more practice on the team.
Yeah, me too. I think he's performed a lot better than what I was expecting coming in. But I also think that Cloud9 had a decent amount of staying power from last season coming in. I think what we added in hindsight was a more stable, a more stable pieces to our puzzle than some of the other teams have done. So I'm proud with how they've been playing, but I know that the challenge is going to be maybe not this split as much per se, but I think come next split, a lot more teams are going to be ready for the LCS, and it's going to be a lot harder at some point in time.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of challenges, we actually have one coming up this weekend on Saturday, February. It doesn't matter, it's this Saturday. At 6 p.m. Eastern, Cloud9 faces off against Team Liquid. The traitor, known as Impact, along with Xmithy, Pabelter, Doublelift, and Ole, will be taking on our boys in blue. And this will probably be one of their toughest matches, at least for this split.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the matchup on paper, it's a really interesting matchup. I'm looking at Oracle Elixir right now, and if you look almost at every team statistic, they're almost all first and second in each statistic. Like early game rating is Team Liquid Cloud9. First tower Team Liquid Cloud9. First 3 towers Cloud9 Team Liquid. First dragon Cloud9 Team Liquid. Dragon percentage. Oh, okay. I guess that's Team Liquid, and then Cloud9 fourth. First Baron percentage, we're the only teams with 100% Baron control on the first Baron. Baron control percentage, Cloud9 Team Liquid. And I think where you start to see the biggest discrepancy between the two teams is when it comes to a vision control. Cloud9 is a better team when it comes to actually placing wards. Wards per minute, Cloud9 is nearly up at 5 with 4.94, while Team Liquid has only 4.44 wards per minute. But Team Liquid's done an incredible job actually clearing wards. They clear the most invisible wards, and they also clear the most visible wards. And Cloud9 is about average in both of those. So I think it's going to be a really interesting struggle between Cloud9's placing of wards and how well Team Liquid can scout out where the wards are and clear them.
Yeah, I think also just, role matchups I think are really interesting. Impact versus Licorice I think will be the one to watch, just because Licorice has shown that he can hold his own against like Huni and Someday. So it'll be really interesting if he can continue that trend with Impact. There are these stories of when Cloud9 would scrim E United before their matches, like to warm up. Licorice would always, solo kill Impact. And Sneaky has said that they've been scrimming Team Liquid a lot, actually. And Xmithy is this really smart jungler who has really good game sense. And Pabelter is one of the top mid laners still in North America. And Doublelift is, Doublelift. And you have Ole, who's probably the number 2 or I guess tied with Smoothie at number 1 in terms of support. So you have this like amazing roster, and I think it's going to come down to just who can be more coordinated. Can Cloud9 be more coordinated and play to their game plan and their own conditions better than Team Liquid? Can you out-rotate Xmithy, and can you crush Doublelift and Ole in lane, so they're kind of starved for resources and all that good stuff. So I think it'll come down to coordination and cohesion. I will say, though Team Liquid is strong, they have shown that they are beatable. They have lost one game, I think, and I think in some of their other games, it wasn't an all-out stomp. I think they had to work for it in some of their other games. So it's not like they are this impervious, win machine. They can be stopped. I think it's just a matter of figuring out how to stop them and playing more cohesively than them.
Yeah, and I'm still looking at Oracle Elixir a little bit. I think the most interesting matchup is going to be at the top lane, just because we know how Impact is, and we know how Licorice has been. And if you look at just the laning stats, Impact edges Licorice out just a little bit in everything except a CSD at 10. So I'm interested to see how they're going to draft around this quote-unquote losing lane.
Yeah, I would say even maybe try to get Licorice the favorable matchup just so he feels comfortable and so he doesn't feel like he's in a tight spot. But we'll have to see.
Yeah, and if you want another interesting statistic, if you look at the damage per minute of all 10 players, actually Cloud9's 3 top, mid, and ADC actually have more DPM than anyone on Team Liquid. And then it goes our 3 players, their 3 laners, and then our jungler, then their jungler. So I'm gonna.
So we win. We win the stats game.
Without looking at average game time, I'm gonna assume it has to do with average game time, which it actually does, because our average game time is 8 minutes longer. But I just thought that was something interesting I picked up.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can pull out the win. It's going to be a very exciting match. I'm going to be watching it very eagerly. And hopefully we can pull out the W. Moving on to our second match of the weekend on Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern, Cloud9 faces off against FlyQuest. Their roster consists of Flame, Shrimp, Keen, Wild Turtle, and Stunt. So some okay players individually, but perhaps not the best as a squad. They're 2-4 in the season, and it seems like they are kind of struggling to make things click among their talented faces. So do you think we just beat FlyQuest outright, or is there something that we have to do to ensure that?
I think that this is a team that we should definitely beat. I'm looking again at the DPM charts, because FlyQuest and Cloud9 have a similar average game time, and yet again our top, mid, and ADC rank higher than anybody else in DPM on their team. So I'm gonna have to go and say that this is going to be a win. I don't want to call it clean, because I'm not 100% convinced that we can finish a game cleanly and break a game open clean against someone with a veteran like Wild Turtle in it. I think it's going to come down to composition, to how fast we can finish the game. But I'm confident that this is going to be a win.
Yeah, I think my only worry, I guess, is if Keen or Shrimp or Flame, I guess, gets a few advantages early because they have shown that they can do well if they're, given special treatment and whatnot, right? So I think that as long as they don't get too far ahead and we don't allow them to really do whatever their game plan is, we should be able to beat them outright. Sven's been looking really good in the jungle. Our lanes have all been looking good for the most part. Bot lane especially, I think Sneaky Smoothie wins just about any bot lane matchup outright. I think the only ones that they'd probably go even with or maybe lose would probably be against Doublelift and Ole and Sven and Nithy. So outside of that, we'll probably beat Wild Turtle and Stun in the bot lane. Even though in their own individual rights, they're both very skilled. And I think Jensen, like 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, Jensen beats Keen. Keen has never been our biggest worry whenever we face him.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's anything big. So I think as long as even if they lose against Team Liquid on Saturday, as long as they keep their head straight, as long as they play to their game plan and play focus, they should have no real issue against FlyQuest Sunday.
Yeah. Keen's an average mid laner at best, so
I mean, sometimes he does really well. It's just that he's not the most consistent when it comes to doing well.
Yeah, that's for sure. So, what are your predictions then?
My predictions. Oh man, I can't even call the Team Liquid one because I think Cloud9 is looking really good right now, and Team Liquid's looking really good right now. So I think that they're pretty even more or less in terms of skill. I think it's going to be a real shootout. I don't know. I can't really even call it. I hope that Cloud9 wins. That's what my heart tells me. But my brain is on the fence. But I think for sure we beat FlyQuest Sunday. So put me down for a question mark and a 1, I guess. What about you, Frozen?
I think since I'm on the podcast, I have to say 2-0. I think the second match is winnable for sure. I think the first match is going to be hard. But there is a decent potential for us to beat Team Liquid. I definitely don't think that we are outclassed in any way, shape, or form, especially because I feel like our core of our roster is more stable than theirs has been. So I think that earlier in the season that it is something that should be able to benefit us pretty well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the core is strong. The core has stayed with us for so long for a reason. It's because they work so well together. It's because they have, had success in the past on this team. I think they'll continue to have success, and I think they've actually been playing probably a lot better than they have before. And I think it might be because Sven allows for a lot more communication than with Contracts or Medios maybe. Licorice is a invigorated young top laner. He hasn't settled into maybe some of the bad habits that other veterans like Impact kind of had. And Impact kind of looked up and down when he played for us. Licorice is new. He can, you can more mold him to play how you want him to play. So, this team has a lot of potential. The core has been playing, I think, exceptionally well. I'm really looking forward to Saturday. It's gonna be a good match. Tweet us your predictions if you want us to see what you think. But do you have any final thoughts before we close out the episode, Frozen?
Nope, just happy birthday.
All right, well, thank you. So that's going to do us for the 70th episode of Bodied. We've been doing this for 70 episodes. It's pretty great. So feel free to tweet questions and feedback to us at C9Bodied or email us at bodiedfancast@gmail.com. We'll try to get back to you whenever you can, whether that be on the podcast or just through Twitter or whatever. And thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Goodbye.